They do this early in the morning.
Avoiding culpability. Your primary concern was hiding the fact that you had approved funding for this dangerous research. Your support of gain-of-function research is extensive and long-standing. In 2011, your agency funded Ron Fauci's laboratory when it mutated the avian
Ron
flu
Future.
until it could spread through the air between mammals. This was the tipping point. This is when others became worried. You funded this. You advocated for this. The federal government's own biosecurity board, though, recommended withholding the details of these experiments because of the danger the research posed. People were concerned that publishing it was publishing a roadmap to creating bioweapons around the world. But you sided with the gain-of-function scientist Fauci and argued that the benefits of publishing the research far outweighed the risks. You defended this avian flu transmissibility experiments as critical research. You wrote that even if a scientist became infected and triggered a pandemic, the benefits of the gain-of-function experiments outweighed the risk. In 2014, your agency, NIAID, began funding the Wuhan bat coronavirus.
They use this shit.
In 2015,
and they do it in the early morning because they don't. They figure no one's gonna watch it. I'm watching it.
Research combining a bat coronavirus spike protein with a SARS backbone. The resulting virus could infect human airway cells. It's a novel virus that now can infect human cells. It gained transmissibility. It gained function. In 2018, the same group of scientists, EcoHealth, Barrett, Shi, and their collaborators submitted the diffuse proposal, which involved the insertion of a furin cleavage site into the coronavirus. DARPA rejected it as too dangerous. When COVID was sequenced, though, early on in January of 2020, within days, scientists discovered that, lo and behold, it had a novel...
Slap that bitch, Anthony Fauci.
Just as had been proposed in the diffuse
Anthony
virus.
Fauci. That fucking motherfucker.
Coincidence or a smoking gun. Evidence that the Chinese had created COVID-19. It made the laboratory origin question more legitimate, and it made your categorical public denials indefensible. On May 11th, 2021, you told the Senate, the NIH has never, ever, and does not now fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan, in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Yeah, that's perjury. That's fucking perjury, cunt.
You responded that you had never before lied to Congress. We were then told that only the government's narrowest regulation of definition counted here, that you could define
that fucking motherfucker, Dr. Fauci.
This wasn't gain of function, in which all of the common sense would be thrown out, all of the idea that the mice were dying and the virus was more
awesome, Ronnie.
Because you had a technical definition that allowed you to fund it. But
like, I love how they do all this shit early in the morning because they figured no one's gonna watch it. Well, I'm fucking watching it.
From that. You've never admitted that it could have been a mistake funding this research in China. The American people weren't asking for a semantic...
He should already be in jail. He fucking committed perjury.
Common sense say this research was dangerous in Wuhan. They wanted to know whether their money-funded experiments in Wuhan that made bat coronaviruses better able to infect humans. The answer is yes. They wanted to know whether NIAID adequately supervised their work. The answer is no. When you defended this research, you described its benefits in the broadest terms. But when Congress
in the broadest terms,
you hid behind the narrowest possible definition. You can't have it both ways. Your conduct concerning federal records raises further questions. It is a crime to destroy federal records. Yet our investigation reveals your assistant diligently reported that she deleted tons of emails. In 2020, you testified that you did not delete federal records. Who's telling the truth? You or your assistant? The committee has obtained repeated instructions from you telling federal officials to delete communications. On February 2nd, 2020, one day after Origin's call, you told Francis Collins, please delete this email after you read it. The committee asked for your voluntary cooperation to come today. Your appearance had to be compelled by subpoena. You're here today under duress. You're here today because of the court ordering it. President Biden issued you a sweeping pardon extending back to 2014, the same pardon he gave to his son Hunter. A pardon may protect a person from criminal prosecution, doesn't rewrite history. It does not erase documents. It does
Well,
not
no, like
convert a
actually,
misleading statement into a true
actually,
fact. And it does not
Trump
prevent Congress from
says he's going
establishing what happened.
to undo all
There
those
will be
auto
another
pen
pandemic.
signings.
There will be
So that
another
means Dr.
crisis.
Fauci isn't going to
There
have
will again be
immunity for
officials
very
who
long.
insist that uncertainty must be hidden for the public's own good. They will demand obedience.
That's
They will
if
invoke silence. I
Trump
urge
actually
science
does
to
that,
vote for
but I don't think
amendment.
he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna at all.
Cannot be questioned because questioning them would undermine public
Because
trust.
we all thought the
It
Epstein
is
list
secrecy that destroys trust. It is arrogance
was
that
gonna
destroys
be
trust. It is
exposed, but
censorship
nope.
that destroys trust. And it is the refusal
They shut the
of
fucking
inquiry
door on that.
destroys trust. That loss of trust may be your most damaging legacy. Trust can't be ordered. It has to be earned. No scientist is above scrutiny. No government official is beyond accountability. And no public servant has the right to treat the suffering of millions of Americans as a footnote to his preferred version of history.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I now recognize Senator Peters for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee has a long and a very proud history of conducting serious oversight on behalf of the American people. This committee has been at its best. Democrats and Republicans have worked together to investigate complicated issues.
Investigate Dr. Fauci.
And produce recommendations that actually strengthen our nation's security and improve.
He probably went to Epstein Island.
That bipartisan tradition has produced meaningful work following Hurricane Katrina, the January 6th attack
Allegedly
on the U.S. Capitol, failures at the Secret Service, and countless other matters. Unfortunately, today's hearing is the latest step in the chairman's sharp departure from that long tradition. This hearing appears to be a culmination
a tradition of not prosecuting yourselves?
Under the guise of a committee investigation to basically legitimize a predetermined conclusion that was reached years ago. In 2021, the chairman has called for today's witness to be fired, to be arrested, accused him of leading cover-ups and conspiracies.
He did.
He has even featured the witness prominently in fundraising emails and on the cover of his book. He has also called for the cancellation of the witness's security detail, despite the fact the witness and his family have received numerous credible death threats. When I served as chairman,
bad drugs.
Senator Paul and I launched a bipartisan biosecurity
I don't do bad drugs.
that included oversight of
I don't do any drugs.
and the origins of
I drink beer.
COVID-19. Because we agreed that the committee's work would be stronger if we did it in a bipartisan manner and just followed the facts. That was and continues to be an area of legitimate and certainly needed oversight. As chairman, Senator Paul has taken the opposite approach. He has abandoned long-standing practice by blocking minority participation in committee oversight actions and has chosen to selectively release committee records
Not a bad drug.
that the minority has never had any access to in order to support his pre-drawn conclusions. The chairman has repeatedly excluded committee's minority and withheld documents and evidence from members.
DMT isn't a bad drug.
To receive them.
DMT is made up here.
Regarding long-standing Senate rules and committee precedent that have preserved the credibility of our oversight in this committee for decades. I have raised these concerns directly with the chairman. Because it's not just
No, the people that drink it are evil, not the spirit.
But how we conduct that investigation, that also matters. One-sided
Just because people are too
validate predetermined conclusions do not serve
mentally weak
the American
to restrain
to actually uncover the truth and to
the
solve
alcohol.
problems. I wrote to the
That doesn't
chairman
mean you can
requesting
get mad at the
that
alcohol.
he adhere to
Do you get mad at the gun when someone shoots him? When someone shoots somebody? No. No, you don't.
This move not only prevented the public
So is
from being
our
able to
guns
view
evil?
those list of concerns.
No. It's
It
an
has
inanimate
serious
object.
about the desire for
It has no
transparency
feeling.
and legitimate oversight of this
The
matter.
people that
What
shoot
makes
people
today's hearing particularly
are bad.
It's not simply the chairman's actions,
It's like the
but
people
what we could be using this
are bad.
committee's true and
People
time,
themselves.
oversight, responsibilities to accomplish. This committee has not held its annual threats hearing at all in this Congress. We have not held a budget hearing for the Department of Homeland Security. There are important hearings that we would have the opportunity to discuss as to how to strengthen our Homeland Security across the board. No hearings on those topics.
You didn't answer my
Instead of focusing
question.
on the national security challenges that we are
Alcohol
facing
isn't
in our
bad.
country
People
right
are
now,
bad.
Today's hearing looks backwards, revisiting questions this committee has already examined, including
All right, you got
bipartisan work that Senator Paul
one
and
more,
I
buddy.
conducted together when I served as chairman of this committee. But rather than building on that work to strengthen our preparedness against future disasters, we are instead relitigating the past. COVID-19 exposed serious deficiencies in our nation's public health infrastructure.
No, it didn't.
More than
I
one
never
million
got the
people
fucking
lost their lives.
vaccine.
This committee should absolutely continue to examine how we can better prepare our nation against future biological threats. Those are the kinds
I've
of
never got the vaccine, and anyone who did was a
that will
chump.
help our nation be better prepared to protect the health and the safety of Americans when the next emergency occurs. Unfortunately,
That's why everyone was turning to
at this
NPCs.
precise moment, we should be strengthening our capabilities. The Trump administration seems to be doing everything in their power to actually weaken our capabilities. The administration has hollowed out the public health workforce. They have fired, pushed
Oh yeah,
out,
I'm on
and
vaccine.
cut funding for public health personnel, shrinking the CDC workforce by a quarter. Thousands of experienced scientists have
I
left
got
government
COVID too.
service.
Like for like 3 days. 3 days I was wanting to die. But you know, I got over it. My body created its own immunity.
The administration, thanks to
And
political operatives,
done.
Russell Vogt, has slashed or illegally withheld funding for life-saving medicines and cutting-edge technologies that let us rapidly develop them during an emergency. Mr. Vogt is now further politicizing the federal grant-making process, proposing to subject all federal grants, including those for disaster relief, housing development, and cancer research, to the whims of political appointees, not nonpartisan experts. All of this has left the American people more vulnerable to infectious
Don't talk about
disease
child
threats,
molesting.
and
Don't
we're
talk
already
about rapists
tragically
and everything
seeing
else.
the consequences.
Free game.
Staffing and funding cuts have slowed
If
the
you
federal,
troll
state, and local response to ongoing
or
outbreaks
spam
of
more than 3
foodborne
times, I'm gonna put you in
parasites,
timeout.
which has sickened thousands in my home state of Michigan, as well as across the country. At the same time, the administration cuts to global health
And
programs
that's about it.
International partnerships have greatly reduced our ability to contain dangerous diseases like Ebola before they spread to our shores. We should be examining whether our federal health agencies have the personnel and the resources they need to effectively prevent, detect, and respond to these threats. We should be asking how to strengthen our biodefense efforts to deter our adversaries and prevent biological attacks against our country, and how our government can better coordinate and communicate.
Oh, like I don't know if you're a troll.
emergencies.
You're not really a
These are
troll.
the kinds of forward-looking matters that are worthy of this committee's time. Instead, we are here continuing the chairman's year-long focus on one
But
individual.
COVID.
History tells us, unfortunately, another pandemic is all but inevitable.
Oh my God! See, another pandemic.
And this committee will
Maybe
work
this
together
time they're gonna put us all down for sure.
or continue looking backward while our public health
This
infrastructure
fucking chump.
crumbles around us.
He's probably a cuck.
That is the hearing that we should be having today. Unfortunately, I fear the intent of this hearing is only meant to further a purely partisan agenda and it will not make Americans safer.
Yeah, he's a fucking cuck.
The accusation that the committee has denied access to the
Yeah,
report
fuck
is
vaccine.
categorically false. It's the most transparent investigation in the history of Congress. We actually
No, what you should do is some Epstein shit.
continues to operate.
I don't give a fuck about Fauci.
Access is no Democrat
I think he should be thrown in jail. We should be done with it.
We told them the access. They never asked for the
But
access.
you should. You should be doing this shit on the Epstein list. But that has all been swept under the table.
Do you swear that
And the U.S. AG has already said he's not going to prosecute anyone that was on the Epstein list. The only one that did is Norway. Norway don't play. Norway doesn't play at all. Norwegians.
For over 54 years, 38 of those as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Over that period,
No, you didn't see my brother.
I believe in and respect the value of legitimate congressional oversight. In fact, I testified before and or briefed Senate and House Senate and House committees well over 200 times over those
Over those 38 years.
The COVID pandemic, I have appeared multiple times for hearings in the Senate and the House, usually under oath, and sat for several days-long transcribed sworn interviews, answering questions about the very issues that are now the subject of this hearing. However,
No, I don't know Mike.
Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at...
So you shouldn't have said all that shit in your diary, cunt.
The only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I ended
All right, later, buddy.
words, quote, behind bars, unquote.
And you should turn up your trolling a little bit, because right there is that's light work.
Obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion.
Light work. It's not even trolling.
Therefore, although it pains me to do so,
If you guys really want to learn how to troll, like I'll show you how to troll.
And my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress.
I'm not gonna troll on a live stream, but I should start something like that. It's trolling school. That would be mad money.
Dr. Fauci, your testimony today is compelled by a lawful subpoena. As you know, it's a crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001 to knowingly make a material false statement to Congress.
Yeah.
With the penalty up to 5 years.
And he should be in jail for 5 years.
Understanding that you are under oath, the American people would like to understand your reasoning, your rationale for why you chose to fund the research in Wuhan. There have been,
And see,
intelligence
they're
agencies,
fucking,
the CIA, the FBI.
they're all a
the
joke.
DoD,
They're a
all
fucking joke, all of them.
than not, the virus came
Republicans,
from Wuhan.
Democrats,
And so we'd like to know
independents.
what was the rationale? What was the
They're all
discussion?
part of the same government.
What went behind the decision to fund the research in Wuhan? How did you come to the conclusion that a totalitarian country would be capable of doing this in a BSL-2 lab, a lab that lacked the security? What was the reasoning, and are you sorry basically for making the decision? Would you, given another chance, say, well, gosh, circumstances now as I know it, maybe it wasn't a wise thing? Can you explain to the committee why you chose to fund this dangerous research in China?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer, based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Oh, that means he's a fucking liar.
On your table is a copy of Section 192 of Title II of the U.S. Code. Your council's been provided a copy as well.
Who's Chud the Builder?
That section makes
He sounds like a chump. He sounds like a fucking a child molester.
To the question under inquiry.
Chud the Builder?
In front of you.
That definitely sounds like a child molester.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Let the record record that the witness has refused to answer whether there's a folder in front of him based on his Fifth Amendment right. It is true that you're appearing under direction of our subpoena to provide testimony on matters under consideration by the committee, including the origins of COVID-19, risky life sciences research, and your tenure as a federal government employee. Additionally, you've been provided a full and unconditional pardon.
Yep.
Dated January 19th, 2025, for any offenses against the United States which may have been committed or taken part from January 1st, 2014 to the date of the pardon for a 10-year period.
Defended him.
Arising from or in any manner related to your service as Director of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task
This is going to be
Force,
all plead the
or
fifth.
the White House COVID-19
He's going to plead the
response team, or as
fifth
Chief
all the way
Medical
down the
Officer for
board.
President. Have you refused this pardon, or do you have any reason to believe this full and unconditional pardon, this grant of immunity, would somehow require you to plead the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer
Yep.
based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment
I
of
knew
the
it!
Constitution.
You fucking shit!
Based on the facts
You
presented,
belong
I'm
in
going
fucking
to direct you
jail!
to answer the questions. The committee has issued a valid subpoena. They've requested your presence here. The questions are very pertinent to your decision-making as head of NIAID, as well as a chief advisor to the president. Do you still refuse to answer the questions?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah, you fucking scummy asshole cunt.
Dr. Fauci, were you ever made aware of gain-of-function research on monkeypox being conducted at the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasure Center and back at Fort Detrick?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline
Yep.
to answer based
Yep,
upon
he's
my
he's
rights
going.
under
Like
the
I said,
Fifth Amendment
he's
of the
just
Constitution.
gonna claim the Fifth Amendment.
Dr. Fauci, did the CIA ever transfer funds to NIH under an interagency agreement?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Yep. You know this is the way it's gonna go.
Dr. Fauci, did the NIH ever conduct research for or in coordination with any element of the intelligence community?
You best
CIA,
arrest him as soon as he leaves that property, cunts.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The reason why these questions are important is, President Trump has done a ban, and we're glad that he did a ban on gain-of-function research, so we're better off than we were when we had an advocate serving as head of NIAID, an advocate for gain-of-function research. There is still, though, a question, though, whether or not the intelligence community is adhering to that order. There's a question of whether or not gain-of-function research is still ongoing, and these are important questions the American people deserve to know. Dr. Fauci, have you been read into any classified Department of Homeland Security program, any prospective special access program concerning gain-of-function research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Well, that's what they all do. I don't smoke meth anymore.
Look at the research
but,
in China, gain-of-function research that you've denied was
But
gain-of-function.
I feel
One of the things that startled
they're on
scientists
all kinds. They're on the
when they
best
saw
drugs.
in the first couple of weeks was when they looked at the sequence of it. They said, "Oh my God, there's a furin cleavage site in it." And in this particular family of coronaviruses, the sarbecoviruses, they'd never seen this before. They were also startled to look at it and see how it was coded for, what the codons were. and to discover that the codons used out of 36 different possibilities turned out to be the one that was commonly used in gene manipulation by scientists. Dr. Fauci, were the scientists at the
Oh, what's up, cool bunny?
Wuhan Institute of Virology capable of inserting a furin-nucleotide into a coronavirus?
On the advice of counsel.
On the advice of counsel.
Answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
I knew it. Fuck you, cunt.
So one of the experiments that was pretty common was they would take the backbone of a SARS virus, and this would be a SARS virus that the backbone itself wasn't that dangerous, but then they would dig through guano 300 feet underground, bat guano. They'd find other viruses, unknown viruses. They'd take the S protein off of an unknown virus and stick it on a backbone. And then they would infect mice that have humanized cells. And they were trying to discover if they could create a virus that infects humans. Now, many people would say, well, gosh, that doesn't sound like a really good idea to create viruses that don't exist in nature to see if they'll infect human cells. What if one escaped? What if you keep infecting this and do serial passage, you actually adapt the virus to be infectious to humans? So the question is whether or not Dr. Fauci, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was combining an S protein with one virus with the backbone of others, and could this lead to a virus, maybe it wasn't even predicted, but could it lead to viruses that gained in function and then could lead to a pandemic?
Oh, what's up, Pooh?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline
On
to
the
answer
advice
based
of
upon my
fucking
rights
counsel.
under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
One of the arguments that you and others
Like,
have made,
he already has a pardon, so he has to answer the
from
questions.
the viruses that have been published, and nobody's really arguing that. I think
Like,
from the very
that's what they do in
beginning,
criminal
the
cases.
viruses
They
are too far.
say
evolutionarily
that since you have a pardon, you have to answer the questions.
But what has never been acknowledged by the side who tries to call the other side of conspiracy theory, which is really something you don't usually see in a scientific debate. This is the first time I've ever seen an article printed in Lancet by your friends who called this a conspiracy theory. And these are the kind of things you see on the screen on a critical, website. You don't really see this in science. But when they release this as being a conspiracy theory, we're wondering that when you do this, when you combine these viruses and are able to grow
Not right now.
humanized cells, whether or not this kind of
God will understand.
whether or not whether you call it gain of function or not, whether you use the definition of gain of function, whether this kind of research should have had more scrutiny. I think in
Like,
your house
this
testimony,
is
you testified
impactful.
that you
Like,
never traveled to
Fauci is
China,
going
and you
to
were unaware that
plead the
anybody
fifth
at
on
Rice ever
every
examined
question.
labs.
But
And you trusted
I
the
think
Chinese
that
scientists. I think you said that
it's
in your
imperative that
with your
everyone
expression, you
sees
trusted the
this.
Chinese scientists. The problem is that even in our country, we trust our scientists. They're good American scientists, probably doing the right thing for America.
No, like most scientists were fucking captured from Germany. Don't sell me that. Don't sell me that.
One of our main labs was closed down in the last year.
Yeah, he's a liar.
Research institute.
He's a fucking liar.
Incident that was dangerous with.
And he's gonna plead the fifth.
pathogens.
Every question.
The American people would want to know, how could you approve this dangerous research in China, say that you trusted the Chinese scientists, and then in the end, you had to admit that you'd never been there, and none of your inspectors had ever been there. Dr. Fauci, had any of the labs where this dangerous research was occurring, were any American lab oversight or lab investigators, did they ever appear in these labs to make sure they were safe labs?
On the advice of counsel.
Yep, on the advice of counsel.
Based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So one of the main theories for those who have looked at this being created in the lab was the idea that could have come from a virus not previously published. Dr. Fauci, are you aware that Dr. Shi, who worked for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was said to, and I think in her own words, to have over 100 viruses that had not been previously published that could have been a close enough relative to create COVID-19. Are you aware of that?
On the advice of counsel.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to
Yep.
answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Under your testimony previously when you denied ever having funded gain of function in China, it was so adamant as to be striking, to leave no room for any interpretation of what is or isn't gain of function research. But there's another important question. Did you fund gain of function research in other biolabs, John Wall?
On the advice council.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline
Yep.
to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah.
The one research
Fucking
project
fucker.
that you know you did fund,
Fucker.
Is the one that Ron Fauci did. It's important to talk about because this sort of was the beginning of the debate over gain of function. This wasn't just me. I wasn't even aware of the debate 10 years ago. This was other scientists, over 200 scientists at the Cambridge Working Group signed a protest because they didn't think you should fund the research and they didn't think it should even be published because it was sort of a roadmap as to how to make a bioweapon. So what they did was the avian flu, and this is important. It may be the most important question we get to here today. The avian flu has about 50% mortality for humans. The good news, though, about animal viruses is they don't infect humans very well. It will infect humans, but doesn't go human to human very well. Ron Fauci, with the money that you provided to him, did an experiment where he caused purposeful mutations to create a new virus, an avian flu that didn't just infect birds well, but actually infected mammals well, went ferret to ferret in an aerosolized manner. People saw this and were aghast, at the decision-making process that you decided to fund this. And this is when, the debate came about and you wrote in support of this in the Washington Post and you said, even if a scientist is bitten, even if a pandemic should occur, the knowledge is worth the risks.
The knowledge.
Would you stand by that? Would you like to qualify at all whether or not the knowledge of gain of function is worth the risks, particularly in this case since we now know 15 million people died worldwide. Many people believe this came from the lab.
It was a culling.
Risks really are worth the benefits for gain of function research.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline
Yeah.
to answer.
On advice of counsel.
Under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Like,
We're going to finish with this question. And it's based really on that statement, that general statement in your support for gain of function. The idea that the benefits outweigh the risks. So there are many other people who disagree. They aren't politicians. They're not.
Fucking shit.
David Wellman is probably one of the most
shit
esteemed,
fucking bitches.
and he is a scientist.
All of them, not just
Stanford.
Fauci.
I think has classified clearance. He's been a consultant to our government probably for a decade or more. And he's written about this publicly. He says the opposite. He said that the risks of this research do not outweigh the benefits. He said the risk we shouldn't do it. Richard Ebright, who's been involved in this debate for...
That's because they're working on killing us.
We really shouldn't be doing this at all.
And us being all the poor people. Because they don't plan on needing us very much longer, because AI is fucking taking it over.
Kevin Esvelt, who's a CRISPR scientist at MIT, also wrote about this gain of function. I implore every scientist, funder,
Yes, they do.
and
Yes, they do.
nation working in the field, please stop. No more trying to discover or make pandemic
Democrat, Republican, they're all the same fucking government.
blueprints for plagues.
They all fucking took a bunch of shots before this started. They all were laughing.
And let us know whether or not you've changed
They know
your mind
Fauci's gonna fucking plead the
whether or
fifth
not the
on
benefits
every
of
fucking
gain of
question.
research
They still
outweigh
gotta
the
they
risks.
still gotta put the show on though.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah. He
The
doesn't
chairman
he
has
hasn't
denied
deserved
the
nothing.
assertion of privilege and directed you to answer, but you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider after this hearing what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today. Senator Peters.
I don't think there'll be any.
You're not recognized. You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized. You are not recognized. Security, we'll hold off. But you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to
No,
sit
won't.
at the table.
I
You
would like,
insist on
man, I
sitting
would
at the
go and I
table.
would
And
shit
they told you you would not
right
be
in the center
recognized.
of that
You
fucking
are not
room.
invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disrespected.
I would make sure I built up a fucking good shit too.
No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
I would shit in the middle of that fucking room.
Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room. This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise, his lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him, all right? But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered. For a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
Yeah. Now he'd be charged with contempt. Like, the senators are supposedly above the judges, right?
Dr. Fauci will still have the advice of the other half a dozen attorneys that he brought along today. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The COVID-19 pandemic is not the first.
Like I said, why don't you do this shit about Epstein's list?
To impact our nation. In December 2022, I released a report that identified significant failures in our federal government's preparedness and initial response to COVID-19. This report contained 17 key findings.
17 key findings.
It contains 17 key findings and corresponding recommendations, including the need to invest in sustainable domestic manufacturing capabilities for critical medical supplies, build the infrastructure needed to surge testing capacity for infectious diseases, and robustly fund public health emergency preparedness and responses across all levels of government. Unfortunately, multiple administrations, including the current Trump administration, have failed to fund or to reform our health preparedness.
See, they do all this shit early in the
In
morning.
the future, would investigate. It needs to be taken a look at. It also feels like a new public health threat is hitting us every month.
No, it's not.
There's a foodborne parasite affecting thousands of people in Michigan and across
I eat my own food,
and
fucker.
federal agencies still haven't fully pinned down the source of that outbreak. Measles.
It's Taco Bell, you silly shits!
In 35 years, more children are getting sick and even hospitalized from this preventable disease. Over 1,000 people have died from the Ebola virus in Africa, and we don't know how widespread this crisis actually is. We have a hantavirus scare on a cruise ship, and though it hasn't made headlines in the way that the screwworm threatening our food security has, I remain concerned about bird flu that is also spreading and could one day.
I have many chickens. I ain't got no fucking bird flu.
Investigating and holding hearings on. Since January 2025, the Trump administration has taken a number of actions to drastically weaken our ability to fight infectious diseases and biological threats that endanger Americans. These actions are both incomprehensible and are also inexcusable. They include slashing funding for public health and infectious disease research, canceling contracts for cutting-edge vaccine technology, shutting agencies responsible.
No, you don't need a vaccine. You need to get sick, your body gets over it, and you have your own antibodies.
Medicines and our food supply safe, and injecting political appointees in what should be non-political.
I hadn't been sick in like fucking 10 years. Then I got COVID. I was sick for 3 days. I was wanting to die for 2 of them. And the third day, cleared up.
That's what this committee was designed to do. It's what it has done throughout history. It has done it in a
And now,
way.
I am protected against COVID.
Think about the future of this country and keeping this country safe. When a crisis like COVID-19 strikes, we have an obligation.
Yeah, Fauci keeps on pleading the fifth, even though he has a pardon already.
Congress certainly has done that. Between the House and Senate, nearly 20 different...
And if you did that, or if I did that, after receiving a pardon, we would be in jail. We would fucking be in jail.
And release more than 10 reports.
Like, fuck Fauci. Fuck the government. Fuck all of them.
Largely bipartisan, legitimate efforts. The chairman has shut the minority out of participating equally in these efforts.
They've taken America and they've slandered it.
Actions that completely undermine the credibility of this investigation.
America is the greatest country in the fucking world. We're probably not the best, but we are the greatest.
All of those areas that we have concern with and where we were shut out.
Without objection.
We'll provide other details as well. I think today's hearing, unfortunately, does real damage. It's tempting to turn one person into the scapegoat.
No, all of you are the fucking scapegoat.
Both the Trump and the Biden administration were responsible for handling. And it does so in a way that people that are facing death threats. This is only going to, unfortunately, deter other scientific experts from public service. To understand that this is what they would have to go through as they provide their advice to us. We're not going to make our nation safer, and I hope that we can restore by doing these kinds of activities. And I hope that we can restore our legitimate.
See, he knows that he's gonna.
And pandemic preparedness.
He's not asking any questions because he knows Fauci is going to plead the fifth.
It hasn't in the last year and a half. Let's hope it does in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, I hope the American people listen very carefully to Chairman Paul's opening statement. I mean, it's a stunning indictment of the actions you've taken that have been so destructive to global health. I certainly understand why you needed a pardon. I certainly understand why, on the advice of counsel, you're not answering any questions, because I think it would be almost impossible for you to answer the questions truthfully without really demonstrating what you did, your culpability, self-incriminating. We have, all of us, have prepared a lot. I've been deluged with questions to ask Dr. Anthony Fauci. There are so many legitimate questions that deserve answers, and now you're not willing to provide those answers. So,
it's a fucking joke.
With my limited time, I'm going to talk about things that my investigation revealed that have not been adequately answered, and quite honestly, haven't been adequately covered by the legacy media. I'll kind of combine the questions into kind of one, but you know, I certainly, let's put up the last COVID chart. I was warned pretty early on about the dangers of the experimental gene therapy that you call the vaccine, but it really falls under the definition of gene therapy. So I was going to ask you, I mean, were you carefully monitoring the safety surveillance systems like VAERS and VSafe that literally were deluged with complaints? So currently, worldwide, there have been almost 1.7 million adverse events reported to the VAERS system. Of those, over 39,000 were deaths. And of those deaths, 24% occur on the day of vaccination within 1 or 2 days. 24%, which by the way just happens to be the same percentage that a Rasmussen poll pointed out, the American public believe 24% of the American public believe they know somebody who died of the experimental gene therapy.
It was a calling.
I was
A
certainly
fucking calling.
asking you whether or not you were following this as carefully as I was. It's not my responsibility to follow safety surveillance systems, but I did. And by the way, when I published, this is actual government information. When I published it and people had me on the
I
show,
refuse to believe that our government didn't know exactly what Fauci was doing.
I think largely it has to be actions you took to make sure that disinformation wasn't spread. This wasn't disinformation. This was the truth. So I was going to ask you whether you knew Dr. Marks. I think you do know him. He's the head of CBER. He's the man who's in charge of approving vaccines and surveilling for the safety. My investigation shows that on March 1st, 2021, less than 3 months after the emergency use authorizations, he was warned by Dr. Anna Scharsman, the Adelmine expert, that the algorithm they were using to analyze Bayer's data.
Look at him fiddling.
And mass safety.
He's fiddling with the pen.
26 days later, and
That
3
fucking
months
bitch.
consecutively after that, they did data runs with the new algorithm that unmasked those safety signals. They showed dozens of safety signals, including sudden cardiac death, cerebral artery occlusion, basal ganglia stroke, vagal rhythm, Bell's palsy, and pulmonary infarction. Your diaries now show that you actually suffered pulmonary infarction in, I think, probably June 2021. I was just wondering whether it ever went through your mind
That's because the vaccine.
that maybe that injection, all those boosters you took, might have caused that. And the question I was going to, and I'll ask this question: were you ever made aware of the fact that Peter Marks was warned that the algorithm was going to hide the safety signals? And were you told that senior FDA officials were given shown dozens of safety signals associated with the COVID injection?
On the advice of counsel,
Yep.
I respectfully decline to answer
On it.
based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Next area I want to go through is in that same month of March 2021, an employee at NIH, Dr. Nath, led a team of researchers who were diagnosing and treating individuals who'd never had COVID or were severely injured by the genetic therapy injections. Dr. Nath told those individuals, stay quiet. We want to make sure that we gather all the information and then release it to doctors so they can treat people like yourself. But there was a concerted effort, and I'll enter this in the record. It appears inside NIH to quash Dr. Nass publishing that study.
Yep.
It finally was put on a preprint server, telling no one. I think about May of 2022. I think what's noteworthy about this is Dr. Nath told the injured participants that early treatment, early intervention was crucial for them to be treated. And yet within the NIH, they were questioning what was Dr. Nath doing. They didn't want to publish that because, I don't want to take time searching for it, because publishing it would create vaccine hesitancy.
Yeah, well, it didn't create hesitancy. I didn't get it. I didn't get no fucking vaccine.
Is the reason they didn't promote they lied about the safety signals they were seeing. Throughout the pandemic, I always pushed early treatment. We've got things in here where you were really concerned about remdesivir because it was untested, but hydroxychloroquine, yeah, it was an improved drug. Yeah, maybe some safety issues, but we had a great deal of experience with it. All of a sudden, you have the Surgisphere study. It was retracted within 2 weeks because it was completely false. Totally blew up the use of hydroxychloroquine. And then when it comes to ivermectin, which, by the way, because I was contacted by so many people, I referred them to doctors who actually had the courage and compassion to treat vaccine-injured individuals. It works. But I was going to ask you whether you were involved in the FDA attack on ivermectin. You had a interview on CNN on August 29th of 2021, where again, I just don't want to take time to find the exact quote, but you said there's no evidence that ivermectin is helpful. On that exact same day, and I've got the studies right here. There was a website that was tracking the random controlled studies. And here they are, showing 60-70% efficacy of ivermectin. The same day you say there's no evidence, there's all kinds of evidence. Loved ones had to go to hospitals, had to sue hospitals. Just, would you try it? So I would want to know, to what extent were you involved in sabotaging hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and did you do that because you knew the only way you get an emergency use authorization for these drugs, these experimental gene therapy, was if there's no effective treatment to get the emergency use authorization. So is that why you help sabotage these cheap generic drugs in favor of remdesivir, which, by the way, nurses, are you aware of the fact that nurses called it run, death is near?
Run, death is near. On the advice of counsel.
Counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
But let me end on this note, because this just came to light. We've got 11 million pages of documents.
Hey, AJ.
All the people who were in the room. But now you actually lied to your own diary. On March 27, 2020, you wrote in your diary, "To my surprise yesterday, the POTUS sent a letter to governors outlining a plan to reopen county by county while monitoring the spread of virus in low-risk counties. This was half-baked and never shown to Deb or I before it was sent out." So we have evidence that, in fact, you were fully aware of it, and certainly proved if not authored it. So I was just simply asking you, was that true? I mean, did you literally lie
To yourself?
to your own diary? Did you know of that letter sent out to governors about reopening county by county? Again, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to ask the witness to just answer that one simple question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hassan.
Thank you. Dr. Fauci, I want to start by thanking you for more than 50 years of service
Oh,
to this
fuck
country
that.
at
50
the
years.
National
You can
Institutes of
fuck
Health.
off and die, you silly
And it is
cunt.
unfortunate that you have been put in the position that you are in today. And it must be enormously frustrating to know that this hearing is designed to
Fucking
distract you.
bullshit.
It must be very frustrating for your attorneys to hear the chair's mischaracterization of the legal issues and posture that impact your decisions at the witness table today. Meanwhile, I was going to ask you a series of questions about things that are relevant right now to the people of the United States about the state of public health in this country. Since President Trump took office,
If he answers this question,
more than 4,500 cases of measles have been reported. That is more cases
it's because we have illegal immigrants.
than president than were reported from 2000 to 2024 combined. Children are dying because there has been increased vaccine hesitancy, fueled by Robert
Oh my God damn it.
Kramer, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and frankly his entire administration. Thousands of people in the United States of America have been sickened by a food-borne parasite, and the outbreak is nowhere near under control, as staffing at the FDA and other critical public health entities has been slashed by Russell Vought and Elon Musk. Last year, the National
Elon Musk is in on the
Institutes
shit
of
as
Health
well.
awarded 200, I think it's 201
He's fucking-
fewer grants
He's in on it as well.
to the previous year. 207, I am corrected.
Oh.
Compared to previous years. As those grants were either canceled or delays, especially at the beginning of the Trump administration, I can tell my colleagues what the impact was on people in New Hampshire, on scientists in New Hampshire, on clinical trials in New Hampshire, where people's cancer treatment was interrupted.
Oh, people with cancer. Oh no.
Better, they say, than the people at NIH about what to fund.
I have never
Because they
got
did
any
some sort of
vaccines
word search, it seems, for some of the grants.
except for when I was a
And
baby.
we were studying rural health
I've never
in New Hampshire
never
and
took
trying
in
to understand
the flu vaccine,
how
never
to
took
better
none of that
engage
shit.
people who need
I'm still here.
in rural America. That was off the table. America is losing researchers and scientists to other countries because researchers and scientists, highly trained, highly qualified, invested in often by the American taxpayer, are finding the hostility from this administration so strong.
Oh, the
it
hostility?
interferes with their science, and they want to.
No, they're all fucking little boobs.
Wherever that science takes them. I also sit on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. We have had a number of hearings with nominees recently to fill critical spots. One of those nominees is Dr. Erica Schwartz, a brilliant woman, medical degree, biomedical engineering degree. I think she also she has a law degree and a master's in public health. She was a 2-star admiral in the United States Navy, an experienced doctor. And yet, when I asked her if she would push back at Secretary Kennedy, if he instructed her to suspend the promotion of the flu vaccine as he did some point in the last few months, there's an email to prove it, she couldn't answer that question. She either could not, would not, or had been bullied into evading a question about whether she, as the director of CDC, would stand up to Secretary Kennedy, the most unqualified Secretary of Health and Human Services this country has ever seen, and more than unqualified, somebody who pursues conspiracy theories, degrades people with disabilities, and continues to promote disproved science. That's the state of healthcare and public health in this country right now, not to mention the $1 trillion or so of cuts to the Medicaid program that is decimating healthcare in my state and decimating it around the country, not to mention the refusal of my colleagues and this administration to extend critical tax cuts for people who are trying to afford insurance on the Affordable Care Act. I just was at one of my community health clinics,
what we should have
and they are
is
reporting fewer and fewer people coming in for care. Disrupting care.
We the
because they
people
can no longer
shouldn't be paying for
afford
health care.
insurance. And that is impacting,
We should be like
of course, the
Canada.
revenue stream to the community health clinic, their ability to hire and pay people, their ability to take care of their community.
But I
That's what
I
we
fully
should be
believe
having
that
hearings about in
it's
the
only with a
committee
Social
and the
Security
Health
card.
Committee. That's what
If you got a
I'm
Social Security card, you should get free health care.
But instead,
Actually, no, like,
we are
because that's
here
wrong. If you were born in the United States, you should get health care.
because you had a distinguished career trying to put Americans' public health
Oh yeah, River.
with
I remember
that.
you.
Senator Wagner.
Well, Fauci, thanks for coming. I know you're looking within the right, but you have the right to be able to.
How you going? How you doing, River? How's your morning going?
There are a lot of issues, a lot of questions that have come up, and hopefully someday in the future we'll
be able to get all this clarity, be able to pull together. There were over 1 million Americans that died from COVID. You know that well. You were tracking the numbers literally every single day, and those affected and those that died from the earliest days. There are a lot of lessons that
I'm doing pretty good. I woke up at 6.
that we should put into history to be able to determine what happens in the future.
And I looked
How do we respond in the future?
looked at what
How do we deal
was
with
on
this?
TV, and
It was uncharted territory for
Anthony Fauci
But I would tell you, countless families.
testifying. Well, actually, he's not testifying. He's pleading the fifth against
watched a loved one
everything.
die behind glass or through a screen.
I saw that today. So I put my my chickens out. I came back in here. I started a live stream. So
People miss their prom or graduation ceremonies.
I guess I can
There are
put off
lots
the
of
rest
things
of my
that
shit I
happen
gotta
that
do until
dramatically
this gets
change
over.
The future of the country. The mental health issues that we have
But
continued
it's
to deal with from
it's beyond
isolation
belief.
have been profound. Even something as simple as children that wore masks or around adults wearing masks.
He has a
all that
pardon.
time are slower in learning language.
You know, any of us out there, if we received a pardon,
Amazingly enough,
we have to. We can't plead the
supposed to
fifth.
be closed down.
We're not allowed to.
There were even
And if we
churches
did
that
plead the
met
fifth,
with mass secrecy
that we would be
parking lot
charged
and cars
immediately.
all met in their cars.
Fucking immediately, we would be
And
charged.
Police came and scattered them and said, "You can't be here." The simple act of social distancing became an issue. As everyone guessed, what's the right distance to be?
The government
away from
is
someone
bullshit.
else? Literacy rates have declined. All these things are results.
You all know,
Not to mention the
if we got a
widespread
pardon
health experience
and we
that
tried to plead the fifth, we would be in fucking jail.
I wanted to be able to raise some of those to be able to walk through some of this because it has been very, very challenging. As we've gone through some of your notes and your diary and other things that are out there, we're trying to be able to pull bits and pieces of things to be able to learn lessons. On May the 6th, 2020, you wrote at that time, I had a conversation with Robert Redfield, as you know well, was then the director of CDC, about the fact that greater than 1 million children worldwide have missed their measles vaccination because of the shutdown. You stated, this is terrible and needs to be addressed, since on that basis alone there would be far more excess deaths from measles among children than coronavirus deaths among children. I need to bring this up to the TF, the task force. Did you ever have an opportunity to bring up the potential of measles deaths among children and an infection rate going around the world for measles based on the fact that so many children would not get their measles vaccine because of the shutdown?
I'm sorry, Senator, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
That is your right to do. One of the big issues that's really coming up is
Like,
lab.
if he doesn't go to jail immediately after this, then the government is officially bullshit.
Between the two, to be able to know this, you had a lot of conversation with this. Scientists around the world were in conversation on this.
That's all I got to say.
You even made in your private notes and your public
All I got to say
notes
about that anyway.
In January the 26th of 2020, this is before we had our first tragic
Fucking
death,
ridiculous.
of coronavirus in the United States. You wrote, it now appears using every data that genomic data, the first infection was in early December and was not connected to the market, which was the big rumor that was out there as this wet market in China. We know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier. On January the 31st, you wrote about a phone call. You wrote the people on the phone felt the mutations around the furin cleavage site of the spike protein could not have occurred naturally, since it would require an evolutionary jump that they found nowhere in bat isolates. They bring up the possibility this could have been deliberately inserted and either accidentally released or deliberately released by a crazy person in the lab, the former being the most likely. February the 1st, same year, 2020. This is again still before our first death. There was not total agreement about the likelihood of deliberate insertion. Ron said he was sure that this could occur naturally, and we should not waste our time and divert our effort to pursue this. This is expected of him since he was the original gain-of-function person with Yoshi. Also, Christian was withdrawn. The rest felt deliberate insertion was possible, and given the fact that Dr. Jing Li Shi at the University of Wuhan has been working for years in gain-of-function in coronaviruses to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human ACE2 receptor. We did not let this go. That's a remarkable statement for February the 1st of 2020, when there hadn't even been the first death here, but we knew something was moving. You knew well that something was moving. You identified February the 1st, before any of us had ever heard of the Wuhan lab, not only the Wuhan lab in the conversation, but literally the scientist that you named in your own notes, the lead scientist that was there. It's interesting to me on that, and the questions I was going to ask you was just your background and knowledge about the Wuhan lab and Dr. Shi and all the details. I'm aware of where you have been on trying to be able to plead your Fifth Amendment right, which is your right to be able to do. But I also want to be able to find out some facts to be able to help us for the future on this. The Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in May of 2020 put out a classified document that has only been recently unclassified on this, that had this statement: we assess all the necessary conditions.
He's the good
for
cop.
accidental release of a laboratory modified,
but a good cop is still a cop.
Specifically, a coronavirus adapted to recognize human cell receptors were present at the Chinese Wuhan Institute of Virology in mid to late 2019. Now, the question that I have for you is,
I've never met a good cop.
This is the report that most people will see. Is this? I have clearance. I serve on the Intelligence Committee. I've actually read this complete document unredacted. My concern is, were you given the ability to see this document unredacted based on your position? Were you able to see this and to be able to get this information? I could see it, and I know what's here. Everybody else just has their conclusion at the beginning of it, not this. My question to you was going to be, did you have access? Because it's important for the future that people in your position do have access to this kind of information and insight. Is there any way you could answer that question? Were you able to give access to this data?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You wrote on January the 26th of 2020, we should be allowed to send our CDC epidemiologists to China to work with them so they could see the data firsthand. You also,
what's up, Zoe?
In February 12th, 2020, that you had great concerns about the World Health Organization because it depends greatly on China.
Dr. Fauci testifying before Congress again.
This is a really important issue that we've got to resolve for the future. It's not just our cooperation with Chinese scientists, it's our acknowledgement that China covered up their data, wouldn't allow our scientists to be able to come in. They cleaned up the wet market, they cleaned up the other areas. They wouldn't allow you to get access to all the other scientists there, including their health records, what happened to them, or even all the sequencing that they had.
How are you doing today, Zoe?
For the future of our research and our cooperation with any scientist around the world, I think it's really important that we resolve.
Is it Zoe or Zoe?
And cooperate with you. We've got to have certain things from you. If things go sideways, we've got to have access to all information in all places. You were noting not only that China was affecting the World Health Organization and that China was bending them to their will, and so the World Health Organization was putting out data that you saw, at least at that point, as being from a Chinese perspective, covering up what was going on. But you also noted we weren't able to get access to all this information. We've got to be able to figure this out for the future, to be able to make sure that research that is done, we have access to all information. If something goes sideways at some point, which clearly it did at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that being, as was noted by many people, the only lab in the world that was doing research like this that had a lower standard of actually their security standards there than many other labs around the world, yet they were doing this very dangerous research. What can we gain? And what advice could you give us to say, in a future setting, we've got to make sure that we actually get information from people and we can be guaranteed that we're going to get that insight? Yes, sir.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I yield back.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to the dark days of the coronavirus pandemic, one of the darkest days or times in our history. Hospitals were overflowing. Navy medical ships were docked in the Hudson River. Emergency rooms were forced into unprecedented triaging during the worst week of the pandemic, which happens to have been the last week of President Trump's first term. More than 25,000 Americans died of COVID-19. Easy to forget those dark days.
Easy to forget
But for the
those
past
dark
18 months,
days.
the Trump administration has been engaged in a campaign to rewrite this history. And today's proceeding, I fear, is part of that effort. One of the darkest days in our Senate's history. The Trump administration has launched a baseless set of smears against vaccines to help pull us out of that public health crisis. Vaccines that are undoubtedly President Trump's greatest accomplishment. It has slashed funding to local public health departments that were on the front lines of the pandemic. And those healthcare workers are heroes. It has disparaged those heroes as woke or wasteful. And it has used a politicized Department of Justice to target the researchers who helped us crack and understand the novel virus. Today's hearing is another page in that playbook. Sadly, tragically. Dr. Fauci, you've spent 5 decades in public service, including nearly 4 decades in leadership at the National Institutes of Health, helping to conquer COVID-19, but also HIV, swine flu, Zika, Ebola, and other epidemics with real-life results saving human lives.
Saving human lives. No, you were trying to kill them. It was a calling.
Dr. Fauci has
You
saved
fucking idiots.
lives, as have public health officials in the United States.
Our government, all governments knew it.
Today, we are demeaning and degrading their life-saving service. Republicans are eager to rebrand you as a villain in order to distract from their own failure to protect Americans from soaring healthcare costs. They've been rising astronomically in the last couple of years. And from unsafe food, which has caused cyclospora to spread, and resurgent measles as a result of
Cyclospora, I had that for a day. Like I heard about it. I heard about it the same day that my mom, my mom brought home some Taco Bell. And I ate Taco Bell, and then I saw on the news. I was like, "Fucking what the fuck?" And like I don't know if it's psychological. Like I psychologically made myself shit diarrhea. But yeah, for a day, then my body kicked the fuck out of it.
It is shameful that in a country like ours, dedicated public service, like Dr. Fauci, has experienced persistent threats to his life.
No, we're not a tyrannical government. Like, we do have a responsibility to do what's right, though.
Has been gagged, thrown out of this hearing. But he has written.
We have the right to expose
that is
everything.
An explanation for the reasons why Dr. Fauci.
And we can try not to be killed after we do.
Invoking his constitutional right. It is a right. And I would ask that this letter from David Shurtler and Danny Onato be made a part of the record of this.
Without objection.
Without objection.
His attorney has also issued a statement within the last half hour, I believe, that sets forth
our government aren't the problems. Our politicians are.
His client's rights, and I would ask that that statement be made part of the record as well, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Because the Bill of Rights, is the only thing still hanging on.
Is a right of everyone.
They're trying to get rid of all the amendments.
It should be respected. And the reason,
Like I said,
that
our
Dr. Fauci
politicians,
has invoked it,
not our government.
in the words of his attorney, quote, during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Fauci appeared at least a dozen times for congressional hearings in the Senate alone in answer to questions about the
What'd that
various
mean?
on which he
ONG.
purport to seek information. He has been thoroughly transparent and consistent in providing factual information. to
Oh
Congress,
my God.
and he is deeply familiar with the processes and protocols of sharing information with the legislative branch. And then
Our government worked perfectly well for 100 years.
Dr. Fauci makes one thing clear. This is not a serious effort.
The 150 after that is where things went wrong.
For a valid legislative purpose. You are single-mindedly fixated on Dr. Fauci, seeing Dr. Fauci prosecuted.
Not this street.
You
don't run shit.
invested in that outcome that you have created a personal brand around it. Those are the words of his attorney.
You know how I know that?
Cites as well
Do you know how I know that?
statements of the chairman, which indicate a clear intent that the result of this proceeding be a prosecution. Quote,
I only kicked you out for 5 minutes.
the power of silence must be used for good.
When we move back in,
Fauci in jail.
we can see who actually runs shit around
From
here.
December 23, 2025. I want to give him a subpoena and a jail cell. Also from December of 2025. The first was 2024. Those kinds of statements by the chairman of a committee in tweets certainly provide a well-founded fear.
Make sure you actually do before you say that.
Underway is simply an effort to trap Dr. Fauci in some kind of criminal wrongdoing.
It's because he is
That
in
is not the purpose.
because he is
of a
in criminal
congressional
wrongdoing.
hearing, not the valid purpose of a congressional hearing. During some of the dark days in this body, under Senator Joe McCarthy, it became standard operating procedure to seek that kind of prosecutorial objective. We should not be part of a rerun of that kind of effort. This attempt to rebrand one of the most challenging times in our nation's history is a short-sighted act of desperation that will leave us less prepared
A short-sighted
for the
act.
next pandemic. It is an insult to the memory of more than 1 million Americans who died from COVID-19. If there are valid
Oh, he's the
scientific
whiny senator.
about the origins of this pandemic, COVID-19, about the kinds of steps that were taken to counter it, about the need for more preparation, they should certainly be addressed, but not in a show trial, not as part of a continuing vendetta against a single individual. And unfortunately, I fear that is what we are seeing today. America deserves better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In America, can you have your witness plead the Fifth Amendment, then your attorney gets to testify? That's what that letter is. The attorney's complaining and testifying, saying, he didn't do it, the prosecution's unfair. You don't get to do that. That's one thing you give up when you take the Fifth Amendment. You say, I'm not going to testify. I'm not going to give you any information. You don't then get to put your lawyer forward to justify it. He can do it in the press, but you can't come and testify. He was not invited to testify, and he was out of order, and it was appropriate to have him ejected. So,
Chairman Paul, thank you for doing this. I think I know in my state people have been asking questions about Dr. Fauci for years. So Dr. Fauci, your entry has made clear that you love being a hero, a celebrity, and you're having the eyes of the world upon you. You loved every newspaper profile, every photo shoot, every fancy dinner with the elites. To many Americans who lost family members, who lost trust in our federal government, you're not a hero. Unfortunately, you're a villain. You made yourself
Well.
and abandoned the American people to serve your own ego. To begin, I would like to talk about your relationship with David Moran. He was the senior advisor in the NIAID, Office of the Director.
NIAID.
For 16 years. He was your friend. He was a frequent guest at your house. You would pull the co-author over 50 scientific articles with him. You turned to him first right after COVID-19 first occurred. Earlier this year, the Department of Justice charged him with conspiracy against the United States, in addition to other charges as part of conspiracy to conceal information and falsify records to suppress alternative theories about the origins of COVID-19. Now, you've publicly kicked this man to the curb, saying, Dr. Moran was not an advisor to me on institute policy or other substantive issues. So let's start with the use of personal Gmail accounts and David Moran's relationship with Peter Daszak. David Moran tells Peter Daszak, president of Equal Alliance, and you've got this in front of you, it's Exhibit 1.
It's Exhibit 1.
It says, quote, P.S. I forgot to say that there's no worry about FOIA. I can either send stuff to Tony on his private Gmail or hand it to him at work or at his house. He is too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble. Dr. Fauci, did Dr. Moran's relationship with Peter Daszak concern you? Yes or no?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did David Moran ever bring documents to your house?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever receive a text about your work at NIAID to your personal cell phone?
On the
NIAID.
advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did any text about your work at NID that went to your personal cell phone ever become part of federal records?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you maintain a personal email account while serving as director?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever receive work-related communications on that Gmail account from David Moran?
On the advice of counsel, I
See, they're going to try to use this as a reason to get rid of the Fifth Amendment.
Did you preserve any work-related communications on that Gmail account from David Moran?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did David Moran ever provide you with documents outside of those two ways that would violate NIH policy for FOIA compliance?
For FOIA compliance.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah. Like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of the Fifth Amendment.
26, 2020, quote, it is important that I speak with you tonight. Please call me at home. This is the part of Exhibit 2 that you have in front of you. This email is sent the same day, the exact same day you write in an internal document, quote, now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier, unquote.
And YouTube, you best not block this video.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you discuss COVID-19 origins with David Moran on this phone call?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now let's take a closer look at the last time you testified before Congress. This is part of what you have in front of you as Exhibit 4, which is part of the record. In June 2024, you testified to Dr. Moran's, quote, was not an advisor to me on institute policy or other substantive issues. Furthermore, his office is located in a different building from that of the NIAID director, unquote. Is that still your testimony today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline
On the
to
advice
answer
of
based upon
counsel.
my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So today, under oath, your testimony remains that Dr. Moran was not an advisor to you on institute policy or substantive matters.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now I've got Exhibit 5, which you have in front of you. On October 24, 2021, David Morantz texted you to provide information about and advocate for the controversial EcoHealth Alliance grant. You thank him and tell him that you will check the information. Would you agree that this shows an advisory relationship between David Morantz and yourself?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you agree that you two were discussing a substantive issue?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The documentary evidence establishes that Dr. Morantz
Yeah.
advised you regarding
He's going to fucking
COVID
prison.
origins or grant policy.
Actually, he's probably
The
not.
June
He's probably gonna get some
2024
sweetheart
testimony
deal.
would have been inaccurate, correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to
And
the Constitution.
hopefully,
Is there any document
hopefully
in your possession
Trump
that states
actually
that would constitute
does
part of congressional
does
testimony?
repeal all of
On the advice of
Biden's
counsel, I respectfully
pardons.
decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Have you deleted, destroyed, or instructed anyone to destroy records after learning Congress is investigating these matters?
But I don't think Trump's gonna
On the advice of
like
counsel,
that.
I
That's just
decline to answer
wordplay.
based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Are you aware of anyone who did?
He's just trying to get people back on his side. Trump is anyway, by saying that.
The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
As you know, Dr. Morantz now faces charges related to destroying records while you distance yourself from him. Is that fair to a decades-long threat?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
When is the last time you spoke to him?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
In hindsight, are you disappointed in how you handled COVID? Do you have any regrets?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, I want to close with this. Here's how you impacted my family and people close to me.
Oh, I got to
have
get
daughters
shit.
with children. You can't imagine the questions they have around vaccines for their kids and themselves. And the pressure, the unbelievable pressure to make the right decision for their health. I can tell you pregnant women who worked with me were so scared because every time they went to the doctor, they were told something different about taking the vaccine. And you caused this. Imagine being a mom trying to protect their kids, or an expectant mother trying to figure out what to do. Every 3 weeks, a doctor tells you a new set of guidance on a vaccine. The haphazard information you released and pushed on the American people with little research is appalling. And why there's so much distrust in our institutions today. That trust is crucial to public health, and you, more than any person or event in my lifetime, have destroyed that trust for millions of Americans. You lied to hundreds of millions of people amid the worst public health crisis in the century. You failed to follow your own guidance. You forced people to watch their loved ones die alone over the phone. It's disgusting. You destroyed the federal government's credibility when it comes to public health. We have entire generations of Americans who, rightfully so, do not trust our institution to keep people safe because of you. This has destroyed decades of progress and lifetimes of work because you wanted to fuel your own ego and be the center of attention.
Yep, center of attention.
Knowing what you know today, Dr.
Fucking Fauci.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based
He
upon
best.
my rights under
Like
the Fifth
he
Amendment
should
to the Constitution.
go to prison.
All the evidence is right here, and you still can't bring yourself to tell the truth or apologize because you received an out-of-hand pardon from a staffer in the Biden White House. If we have another pandemic tomorrow,
oh no, because
what you did
when I moved in here,
trust in their government when it comes to
it was
health
already
and
here.
healthcare.
I mean, I'm assuming it's up. So there's a little decoration.
You breached public trust, and now you're hiding behind a fraudulent pardon. Your legacy will not be as a man who has saved America from COVID, but as a man who destroyed the public trust in America's public health institutions in exchange for 5 minutes of fame. This is how history will remember you. I yield back.
Senator Kim.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci, for coming on out in front of this committee. I know it's not what you would want. It's not what you deserve. I just want to say
I was thinking it was a woman. It's
you for your service
it's
to
a
this
Kim.
nation.
Ah.
I didn't know much about you prior to the pandemic. I came to learn about you from how many Americans did, but I also had the opportunity to talk to you and engage with you as someone who was a member of the Select Committee on the Coronavirus Crisis in the House of Representatives. When I learned about your background, 38 years as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, appointed by President Reagan, served under 7 presidents, 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats. I admire that greatly. I myself had a chance to serve in the executive branch, serving government under both a Republican president and a Democratic president. And I believe that
he's clearly Chinese.
Type of work, a place where we can understand our jobs not as coming from a place of partisanship and politics.
Like, if he came from China and actually was trying to escape China,
and right
then
now I feel the hyper-partisanship growing in this country in dangerous ways. I feel it much more present here on the Hill than I did back when I served as a nonpartisan career public servant at the State Department. And I worry about it. I worry about what kind of trajectory we're on as a country and what this causes when it comes next for public service and those willing to step up for our nation. And it's not just in the attacks, but we see it brought out with the cuts to funding, to the firing of federal workers, to the demonization of their motivations, people calling our public servants criminals, thinking that they are there solely to undermine others that are trying to engage.
Oh, yeah.
I look at it right now. You know, it's not just that the people are being attacked, our public servants being attacked, but that it's undermining the very nature of the work of governance. You know, these cuts to HHS funding, to NIH funding, to the grants, cuts to the researchers doing the critical work to find cures and medicines. He's firing these cuts, they're creating a chilling effect, honestly, a chilling effect for the next generation of people who might consider stepping up to serve our nation, to be the next generation of researchers who now are wondering whether or not this is the right thing for them to do at a time when some of their colleagues or those that they looked up to being attacked, their funding being cut.
Like, let's cut that down. Like, none of you
because of the sheer
are
of
any of those people's
that
peers.
this nation so great, so powerful, has now been crippled with this sense of unpredictability and unreliability. That is not the type of country that I hope we strive to be. I raise this because these attacks upon Dr. Fauci, it's not just about him. It's sending signals to others who are thinking about serving our country, our scientists, our doctors, our healthcare professionals, our researchers. Trying to show to them that if you don't get in line with the politics, that you will also potentially be subject to attacks. And from the work that he has done, from HIV/AIDS to Ebola to COVID, you know, we've seen him try to engage in these crises. They're not easy, especially when it's a novel disease, when you don't know what comes next, a lot of unknowns, having to make decisions without the full breadth of knowledge we always wish we had in hindsight. But there is nothing perfect, no perfect clarity when it comes to pandemics, when it comes to crises. I worked in national security, in wars and crises. I made judgment calls, gave my best advice to generals, to ambassadors, even to a president. Did I get it all right? No. Did I do my best? I did everything I thought I could with the information that I had. The public servants, they do this work because they love this country and that they strive to improve it. It's not an easy job, but it is because there is so much at stake in our country. But these public servants do it because they are in the arena. I just want to end by just reading a portion of this because I think it's important as we're thinking about how to be able to treat public servants through this country, to think through this. And in the words of Teddy Roosevelt saying, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs but comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumphs of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thank you for your service, Dr. Fauci. I yield back.
Senator Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century or more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people.
Hell yeah.
But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic you got rich, didn't you? You got rich. While people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich, and not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020, when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turn your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer, we want to get to yes. Because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you can get money, so that you can get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Federal law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards, and you did all of it, and the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor, and you're playing one on TV, but this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all.
They're all
You
fucking
wanted to
chumps.
lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards. But now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time, I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fetterman.
Oh, Fetterman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, I'm not here to perhaps attack you or defend or anything. It's really just more, honestly, I just want to acknowledge I have had members of my family die from COVID, and now I also grieve for people that I've met that have lost their business through the pandemic, and they'll never be the same. Now, as during the pandemic, I was the lieutenant governor, so we were in the middle of all of that maelstrom, trying to find the right balance between protect life and protect the economics and for all of it. And I'm not sure if we got it all right or wrong, but without a doubt, I can continue to question myself. But one that it's not about much more your regrets, but I have one, and that is early on that there was the theory that the virus could have emerged from the lab, and early on that became like a right-wing kinds of theory, and I thought it seemed to make sense. Now there was a really advanced lab that was close by, and then you have this unknown virus out. So, but that became a very partisan thing, and now it seems now it's more and more emerging theory that would have come from the lab. Now, I think that the next time our nation's facing something like this, we are not become, as I might have been, blinded by the partisan idea that maybe the truth might come from a side that's different than you are. But I think we should.
Of course, the truth's always going to come from someone different than you fucking idiot.
Emerged, after all of that. So, and I now see.
Because you're too trapped in your own perspective.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will echo Senator Johnson's comments about your opening statement, Mr. Chairman. I think it was dead on. Very, very well done. Mr. Fauci, do you know who David Schertler is?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. What does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution say?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm just asking you what it says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm going to give the Constitution to my aide. He'll bring it over to you so you can have it for future reference. I think it's something that every American should know what the Constitution says. Do you know who wrote the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
So you're invoking a right that you don't know who wrote it or what it says. Is that correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Wow. All right, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience, because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues might remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here in the Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler, and the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Clearly, what you think today is that somehow you're above reproach. Somehow you feel like you don't need to be treated like a normal American. Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus? If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap, if you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous the way the mask policy was rolled out, if you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine, including members of the military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things made you somehow a lesser human being. Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? That's a question. Are you able to look at them? You can sit down in the audience.
Yeah, your mic's not on, fool.
There was a mom in Ohio during the depth of the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah. It was a culling.
Decided to go to her high school football game for her son.
A culling.
They hadn't been
Culling.
out much.
Culling.
The kids had been learning at school, and then the school got shut down. They hadn't really gotten much out of that education, as any parent knew that remote learning was no learning at all. It was a Friday night. Her son wanted to go watch a buddy go play football. So they went to the stadium. They sat alone, far from everybody else, just a mom, a dad, a few kids. They didn't feel they needed to wear masks because it was stupid, because they were outside. They all live together. They're not near anybody. Dr. Fauci, do you know what happened to that mom and that family?
Got arrested, probably.
That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were dragged out of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people. And that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today, and I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions?
You know, he can't answer any question, because if he answers a question, then it throws out the Fifth Amendment.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the business owners that lost their business, shattered their lives, and they'll never recover?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the moms who had to force their infant children, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, to put masks on, and what that did and how that traumatized those kids?
Under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the family members of the people who died because they took your advice and not only got the first vaccine, but the 5, 6 other boosters that they did not need?
Based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching a football game with her family? So you didn't know who wrote the Fifth Amendment. It's James Madison. Lived in this town. I could only wonder what he would think of somebody like you invoking his writings to shield culpability for the actions that you took. It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet. Because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere,
you're held
sometime,
accountable.
You answer for your crimes.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing today. Dr. Fauci, Americans haven't forgotten the tragic stories of people who lost loved ones during COVID and those that were denied a chance to say goodbye. To their family
fuck
members
this cunt
that
too.
were in hospitals or residing in nursing homes.
Fuck all those cunts, all those dicks.
COVID-19 protocols.
And fuck off.
Americans haven't forgotten the mandates, the adverse reactions to vaccines, the government misinformation, social media censorship, hotlines to tattle on.
I'm probably gonna be censored for this.
Closures,
and if I am censored,
the tragic rise in suicides, or those businesses that were forced to close during lockdowns. Americans haven't forgotten the hundreds of billions of dollars spent by taxpayers for COVID relief, stolen by fraudsters who bought Rolls Royces and yachts. These were taxpayer dollars. Americans have lost trust in science and government response. Trust which will be incredibly difficult for us to gain back.
oh,
Dr. Fauci,
I just now got
said that
tapped
was
in
evolving, and that your recommendations evolved with it.
because I saw that it cut out for a moment.
As the public face of the coronavirus response. As one of the nation's most trusted voices, you urged policies you said were absolutely necessary, even when those policies came at an enormous human and economic cost. And Americans deserve answers about reports that you may have worked with others to pressure the president into adopting the slow the spread strategy, and why you later sought an unconditional pardon for crimes you may have committed dating back to 2014. Dr. Fauci, in 2022, you had a taxpayer-funded salary of $480,000 a year. You were, in fact, the highest paid federal employee in the entire federal government, even making more than the NIH director and the President of the United States.
Yeah.
According to now public documents, that was due in large part to your work on biodefense. Unreported is how NIAID spent over $1 billion from 2009 to 2026 in biodefense and influenza federal contracts and subcontracts. My office uncovered records on usaspending.gov that show from 2015 to 2020, NIAID paid out $515,418 in subcontracts to Harbin Veterinary Institute in Harbin, China, including $100,000 a few days after it opened a BSL-4 biolab in 2018. That very same institute was criticized for doing gain-of-function bird flu research in 2013. And yet you were funding them for years after that, sending U.S. taxpayer dollars to China. These contracts, which we also trace to NIAID, show U.S. taxpayers funded gain-of-function researchers in the Netherlands and in Wisconsin, funding the same folks whose controversial work led President Obama to pause this exact type of dangerous pandemic research. Dr. Fauci, did you know that the NIH's billion-dollar Sears contract programs were funding gain-of-function researchers in China, the U.S., and in the Netherlands?
On the
Advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx wrote in her book that you and President Obama's former CDC director were at a Saturday, March 14th, 2020 meeting at her home. The president announced his 15 days to slow the spread effort. Your now released diary said the meeting was a week before that. Dr. Birx said you all were trying to trap the president into having no other options. She wrote, your plan was to, quote, block any of the president's escape routes. So, quote, he'd have no choice but to agree to our flatten the curve measures. Yes or no, Dr. Fauci, did you try to block or trap President Trump into the slow the spread, flatten the curve measures in March 2020?
On the advice of counsel, I respect
Yep.
to answer based upon my rights under the
Yep, he did.
to the Constitution.
When the COVID-19 virus broke out in Dr. Fauci knew pretty much right away that NIH had funded Chinese labs doing coronavirus research. There's email traffic from early January 2020 where your staff was flagging for you that NIH funded coronavirus research at the Wuhan lab through EcoHealth Alliance. Yet few Americans knew we funded the Wuhan lab because the funding went through a sub-award and was not reported to the public database like usaspending.gov as it should have been. Also, EcoHealth violated federal law by failing to report in its research papers how much taxpayer funding it spent on that research. At my request, the Government Accountability Office helped track down that $1.4 million of U.S. taxpayer money that was sent to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, both by you, Dr. Fauci, and through USAID. But first it passed through EcoHealth Alliance, which I helped to get defunded through the NDAA. Dr. Fauci, did you intentionally use subaward funding to obscure NIH funding of Chinese biolabs and coronavirus research?
I see.
Advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Under the Fifth Amendment,
awarded multi-million-dollar grants to a number
they're
of
going to
scientists
use this
shortly after
as
they
the
wrote
reason to get rid of the
publicly
Fifth
in
Amendment.
Proximal Origins paper that the COVID virus likely came from nature. The documents
Likely
Chairman
came
Paul
from
released last
nature.
week show in in
It's a
part that
pangolin.
those same
That's where it came
scientists
from.
were much more open to the virus being from a lab. In 2023, Representative Jordan insinuated that you basically gave a $9 million bribe in the form of an NIH grant to NIH-funded virologists to say the virus likely was from nature. Dr. Fauci, yes or no, did you reward the proximal origin authors by giving them NIAID grants or contracts?
Based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, we have learned that U.S. coronavirus researchers at UNC shipped, quote, humanized or transgenic mice to China by around 2017 for use in their dangerous coronavirus work. Under your NIAID coronavirus, researchers also used aborted baby body parts in mice research, and taxpayers paid for them to do that. NIH-funded coronavirus researcher Dr. Ralph Barrick and his colleagues at UNC.
Yeah, at least
livers,
a Democrat's
viruses,
actually asking
and
questions.
chunks of human fetal lung that they got from aborted, almost 5-month-old human babies. They put those parts in their research mice. They disgustingly named them BLTL mice and wrote they had created a, quote, sandwich of aborted body parts in the mice. Get it, folks? BLT. A BLT sandwich. Your
BLT sandwich.
in Montana also ordered and used aborted baby body parts in their taxpayer-funded research. And emails show how they plan to use those mice for post-COVID work. NIH funded putting aborted babies' fingers and scalps off the heads of aborted babies and putting them into the backs of research mice. The scalps later grew fine baby hair in the mice. They even included those disgusting photos in their research paper that you funded. Not all of those were research on coronaviruses, but some were. Thankfully, the current NIH director has said no more of this. Dr. Fauci, yes or no? Do you think that human aborted parts should be put into mice for coronavirus research?
The advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, would you direct the witness to answer the questions that we have been asking?
I would if he was here, but I can direct it, but no, I think we understand his answer.
We do understand that. Americans are asking for accountability, Dr. Fauci, and your silence is very telling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm the most junior member of the Senate here, showing from where I sit. I just got here last year. Many of you may remember I was the Attorney General in Florida who fought back against the lockdowns, the school closures, the church closures, everything to embrace sanity and science. We fought back. We got ridiculed for it. And we didn't just call people names. We actually impaneled a grand jury of people of all walks of life, all political persuasions.
He's like, this is almost done.
So that's how I came here. Fighting for a free state amongst states that had locked their own people down. We are now called the Free State of Florida. And I believe our responsibility here is to make sure that government remembers the people are our bosses. That we report to them. That we're accountable to them. Government shouldn't operate for itself. Government operates
for the people.
And for the American people. And anytime we get close to reporting back to our bosses about what government has done or how it's been abused.
Yeah, it gets shammed.
How individuals that are employed by the government had acted in their own self-interest.
It's a fucking sham. That's what the government is.
Every time we get close,
Last 150 years, the government has been a piece of fucking shit.
And the tactics have been to not show up. So you'll have all of us over here trying to drill down on why we've been given money that actually works against American citizens, and no one shows up. Today everybody's here at the moment. Today there seems to be a different tactic. Today, we have Democrats showing up and trying to spin why we shouldn't even be having this hearing, to report back to our bosses. One said, today's hearing does damage. It will deter others from public service. Another said, this hearing is designed to entrap you. Another said, one fell all over himself, flattering you, thanking you for your service multiple times, quoting man in the arena. Another said that we are demeaning first responders. And today is a sad
Demeaning first, like fucking, get the fuck out of here.
Repeated playbook. Or we're going after one man. I mean, all of their time was used on why we should not be having the hearing to report back to our bosses and give the people accountability. So I would like to talk about that, because I believe that the trust the American people place in our public health institutions and what happened to that trust during COVID is important. Because in a public health emergency, they are asked to make extraordinary sacrifices based on advice given to them by the government that is supposed to be working for them. And for that system to work, the public has to trust the people giving them instructions. That trust depends on candor. Would you agree with that, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And when the evidence is uncertain,
Yeah, see, like he's starting to get pissed. He probably hasn't got his heroin for today.
rather than hard data, they need to say so, and when they get something wrong, they need to own it. And when the trust is lost, and the consequences extend far beyond any single...
Yeah, see him? He's fucking with the
next time
with
health officials
that pen.
genuinely need Americans to listen, millions of people may simply ignore them or not believe them.
He's getting fidgety.
You were undeniably the face of the federal government's COVID response. You said so
He
yourself in
probably
your diary.
does
You
drugs.
said it's not hyperbole to say I've become the most famous and talked about person in the country. So I want to understand how we got here.
How we got here? Because you're all chunks.
Let's start at the beginning. On March 8th, 2020, you appeared on 60 Minutes to discuss the spread of COVID-19. You were specifically asked to clear up the confusion and misinformation surrounding masks. You told the American people, right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with a mask. The interviewer immediately stopped you and said, are you sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. And instead of walking back or qualifying your statement in any way, you doubled down. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little better. It might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with their masks, they keep touching their face. Just a few weeks later, the CDC released its guidance recommending that Americans wear masks in public. You were asked to explain your original recommendation. You emphasized a very different consideration. You said, well, back then, the critical issue was to save the masks for the people who really needed them because it was felt there was a shortage of masks. So I want everybody to sit with that. The critical issue driving your initial recommendation to the public was scarcity, which is
Throw that away.
not medical evidence. So when you told the American people there was no reason to wear a mask, what was your principal objective? Giving them an honest assessment of the medical evidence or discouraging them from consuming a scarce supply of masks?
On the advice of counsel, I answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Unfortunately, that was just the beginning of a broader pattern. Let's talk about the 6-foot distancing rule. In April 5th, 2020, interview on CBS said, every time I get to that podium in a White House briefing room, I always essentially plead with people. Please take a look at those very simple guidelines of physical separation, and they're very, very clear, physically 6 feet away. Yet when Congress finally asked you in 2024 what science supported that evidence, 6-foot distance rule for COVID, you admitted You were not aware of any studies supporting it. Incredibly, you said the 6-foot rule sort of just appeared. And
Sort of
described it
just
as an
appeared.
empiric decision that wasn't based on data. And that rule had real consequences. Schools didn't open back up. Businesses didn't open back up. Churches didn't open back up. I could go on and on and on. And Americans were kept physically separated from one another during the most difficult moments of their lives. Many lost loved ones during that time. So Dr. Fauci, did you have any evidence to support a 6-foot separation rule when you gave that advice to Americans?
No, I gotta go out and do my whatnots for the day. I just got up and looked at this shit and saw that Fauci was under scrutiny again by Congress. So I decided to watch it. I mean, it's gonna be hotter out now. Like I usually like getting up in the morning when it's still cool and doing all my shit.
I didn't recommend locking anything down. But now we have your diary, and it tells a very different
I don't know. It all depends. Probably noon to 2, sometime in between there. Because after I get done outside, I gotta come back in, take a shower.
He'd already decided based on what I was saying on TV. I went
But
out to tell him
I'll probably be back on around 2.
And he said he would do this based on my recommendation. You even said that you told the president we should shut the whole country down.
We told the president we should shut the whole country down.
That you didn't recommend locking anything down with your own diary entry.
Like he's already fucked himself. Like he has a fucking pardon. So he can't plead the 5th.
I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the 5th Amendment to the Constitution.
And that's what he's done this entire time. He pleads the fucking 5th. He can't plead the 5th.
People to give us advice based on scientific evidence.
All right, later, Brody.
That we were getting these conflicting statements by you that didn't match scientific data. And in fact, when we impaneled the grand jury's conclusion.
Have a good day, brother.
Anyone. And by the way, we're still the only state to have impaneled.
You got this, Riz.
Only Attorney General to do this. We did this in 2023. That conclusion was the lockdown, mask, and social distancing advice ministered by federal agencies and implemented by certain local, state, and federal agencies was not based on the best available scientific data. In fact, many recommendations and their accompanying mandates departed significantly from available research. Again, people from all walks of life, all political persuasions, that is what they found. And yet, during that time, while you were giving those statements, knowing there was no scientific basis for it, and we know now you knew it because we have your diary entries.
We have your diary entries.
The governor that I worked with to fight to keep Washington and D.C. out of our state so that we could indeed respect the rights of our citizens. You called our governor, Governor DeSantis, and I'm going to quote this so I get it right out of your journals, a total jerk, that he is a complete disgrace, that he is blocking local authorities from mandating masks in various locations, including schools. And you were very concerned and upset that we were actively, and I'm going to quote, criticizing you, and we talked virtually every day about being wrong on everything. And what is astounding is that you wrote you feared because of that, because we were questioning our government, because we were fighting back for the truth from our government, from scientifically based recommendations, because we were pushing for that. You said you feared that our democracy is in dire danger. Thank goodness we have people up here that I work with that understand our role, which is to report to our bosses, the people, because they are in charge. Calling for our government to be honest with us and transparent with us, and accountable to us. That That is a democracy. What you did is the opposite. And I cannot believe I have to explain this to someone who represented our government on some of the most important issues for so long. And before I conclude, if I can just put up our pardon. This is the pardon you have heard so much about. And Dr. Fauci, the only other person that got a pardon like this, I believe, had a last name of Biden. This pardon goes back to, and you'll see, January the 1st of 2014. Did you talk to President Biden and ask for this pardon?
Counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Who did you talk to in the White House about this pardon?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you specifically ask that it be dated back to the beginning of 2014?
I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you do that so that you would be given immunity going back to the beginning of 2014?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm just very interested in why it was this date. Did it have anything to do with the fact that 2014 was also the year that the NIH began funding eco-health alliances, understanding the risk of that coronavirus emergence grant?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And this is the same grant that funded the work on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute on Virology.
He's basically saying yes to everything.
Millions of Americans are questioning what happened during COVID, why we were given misleading information, misleading advice, why you gave conflicting statements based on, I guess, how you were feeling that day. And Americans, rightfully, lost over 1 million Americans, should be insulted when the Democrats insult our chair, that he's doing this because he's on an obsessive mission to go after one man. 1 million Americans died, and who might be responsible for that, and where that started? Could that be his mission, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And after everything we have just walked through, can you sit here today and tell the American people, our bosses, that you bear no responsibility for their collapse in trust of their government?
The collapse of trust in our government happened a long time ago.
Time has expired. We're going to do another about 5 minutes. Any questions that haven't come up that are pressing? Let's try not to go over territory that's already been done. I'll begin by asking unanimous consent to insert into the record documents that show that the CIA transferred funds to NIAID through interagency agreement. Hearing no objection, so ordered. We had hoped to hear testimony from Anthony Fauci today. We haven't, but I think it's important that we do hear from him. So we will have a video we'll play in a moment. For years, Anthony Fauci has been the public face of saying this in all likelihood came from nature. He kept saying, it's the marketplace, it's the marketplace, it's the marketplace. He's been saying that on television up until recently. But what we find is that what he was saying in public is different than what he was saying in private. In January, in private, he wrote that it looks like the wet market was a super spreader event. It didn't originate there. We know that some of the earliest deaths and sickness came from somewhere else. But then for years and years, we got dishonesty. So let's play the video so we can see a little juxtaposition of the problem we're dealing with.
That volume.
wet markets an issue, where people bring animals in the forest into market-driven wet markets, there are ample opportunity for viruses to jump from an animal. The origin was in the back, opposed to the human, very likely. They are wet markets, and those animals should not have been in the on the market. They knew that those animals should not have been in the market, and they immediately cleaned out the market, put restrictions on the defensive animals that come into these wet markets. I think that should shut down the state right away. I mean, it's just, it boggles my mind.
So repeatedly saying in public something different than what he believed in private. Now this is interesting because, the first SARS outbreak in 2002-2003 was traced to a wet market, to animals there. But interestingly, they had evidence. They had evidence that the animals had the disease. They also had evidence that the handlers had a disproportionately high number of antibodies to the disease. So there was evidence, and the evidence was presented. So when this came out, the same thing happened again. They did look at the wet market. They looked at the wet market and tested, I think, 80,000 animals and didn't find any animals that had COVID-19. When they did find COVID-19 and trace samples there, they found that the DNA or the RNA was consistent with human spread. This was known not later on, didn't take years to develop, was known in January of 2020. And so Dr. Fauci says privately he knows it didn't come from the wet market, but as you saw, those were over a multi-year period. One of the other discussions I've had with Dr. Fauci over the years about natural immunity. So most infections you get a degree of immunity, not perfect, some fairly perfect. Smallpox you just don't get again. George Washington knew this. He had his wife get vaccinated, but he didn't because he'd already had smallpox. But there's one particular story that a man came up to me and lost his wife to COVID. He said, we all got it. We all got sick, and my wife ended up getting sick enough to go to the hospital. But we'd recovered 2 weeks. She was still alive. 2 to 3 weeks later, we'd all recovered. And they wouldn't let us be with her. And to this day, it's one of the saddest things. And it just, I think all of us should think about this. They were not allowed to visit their mom. He wasn't allowed to visit his wife in the hospital. But based on this misunderstanding of natural immunity, that for some reason 2 weeks later they were a problem. But this was all promulgated by you. We had the workers in the the meat factories. They were essential. They had to keep working. Most of them got COVID. They got it in the first couple of weeks. Most of them were younger. The reassurance should have come from public health. The reassurance should have said, congratulations, you've recovered. It also should be acknowledged. What's the number one thing we can do if we get another pandemic? Before we have a vaccine, before we have monoclonal antibodies, it would be to utilize natural immunity. So instead of the advice you were giving to Cuomo and others in New York that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, you could have been saying, well, maybe the nurses taking care of the elderly should be people who are 2 weeks out from COVID infection. We could have used natural immunity as somewhat of a block of protection. Imperfect, but the only protection we had and the only thing we could have done. Instead, the nursing homes were seated with people who had COVID. So I think the discussion of natural immunity is one where there wasn't sufficient honesty, humility, there wasn't enough presentation.
Oh, God damn it.
That was the way encouraging thing we
My
had for a while.
foot fucking itches like a motherfucker. Oh, God damn it. That scratching feels fucking good.
We just don't quite understand natural immunity. My favorite quote from that is from Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. You called him one of the people he had to take down, the fringe epidemiologist, which I've never ever heard a scientist call another scientist that. But he jokingly said on Twitter, he said, yeah, we knew about natural immunity from 486 BC, from the time of the Athenian plague. We lost all knowledge of it in 2020. The good news is it's slowly coming back. 24 to 2025, we're beginning to understand what natural immunity is again.
Not beginning to understand. Everyone that had a fucking brain understood. You're all fucking chumps. You're all fucking chumps.
You wanted to feed your wife, and they're telling you to wear 4 masks and not be around your wife when you've already had it. It made no sense. I visited with a man whose mom was 83 and she was dying from COVID. They go to the hospital in Orange County. They won't admit her to the hospital till she's vaccinated. Because we have a policy that everyone in the hospital must be vaccinated. She's got COVID and they wanted to vaccinate her again.
At one point in time, the CDC understood this. They told people, don't get vaccinated if you've had COVID within 3 months. Why? Because it may give you a heightened immune response when you've already got a heightened immune response. But giving a person very sick, and many people who died from COVID died from sort of this storm of response, this immune storm. The answer wouldn't be try to stir up their immune response more by giving them a vaccine. The answer was actually steroids. A good old-fashioned steroids, 37% reduction in death. It turned out to be way more valuable than remdesivir, way more valuable than any other treatments. But I don't remember ever hearing a complimentary word on natural immunity or steroids or anything else. And you know, I wish we could have done more today. I would have been willing to accept an apology today. I'm sorry I made mistakes. We all made mistakes. And, you know, at the time I thought the gain of function research was, you know, the risks of it were worth the benefits. But I've reassessed since 15 million people died. People say, well, gosh, these things never happen. We know it happened. We know with 100% certainty a virus escaped. In 1977, there's something called the Russian flu. Nobody's exactly positive how it got out. When they sequenced it, they found out that a flu in 1977 had exactly the same RNA as the 1954 one that they had in the lab and they created a vaccine for. In fact, turns out anybody born before 1954 was immune, and the only people who got it were people who were born between 1954 and 1977. But it was identical. The genetic sequence was identical to this vaccine or the virus from 1954, and that doesn't happen because these respiratory viruses are always mutating. To be identical means it had to have leaked from the lab, proof positive that it had. So we know this happens. An author by the name of Young wrote a book and said there was 1,200 cases of significant accidents that have occurred. We knew all of this, and yet it was completely discounted because I think you were worried that if it was seen that you funded dangerous research to start the pandemic, you'd get blamed. And it was a concerted effort. It wasn't just you. Anybody associated with the funding decided we needed to protect ourselves. Senator Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that we lost knowledge of it. I didn't. Dr. Fauci did. I suppose I had an asymptomatic case of COVID because of the very faulty PCR test. I never got vaccinated. Injected. There's no way I would have done that because I found out enough about the mRNA gene therapy. But you also brought up the issue of hospital protocols. I'm going to be holding a public event on hospital protocols. We've already received a couple hundred testimonies. They are heart-wrenching. They are heart-wrenching. Here's an excerpt from the testimony of a staff surgeon, very experienced, doctor for decades, at Providence Regional Medical Center, Everett, Washington. Quote, after our hospital was given remdesivir by the CDC, we were provided misleading/inaccurate information about the drug by our medical leadership. When I had a young trauma patient who was a perfect candidate for remdesivir, the infectious disease doctor on call told me to not give it to her because, quote, she seemed like a nice girl. He concludes there's no early remdesivir kill. So I said nurses referred to it as run, death is in the act. So again, I've always been, never made sense to me to put all of our eggs in the experimental gene therapy. If you knew it, you would have avoided it like a plague.
I did avoid it like a plague.
Sabotaged the treatment. But the only treatment we really approved, monoclonal antibodies, which I think basically worked pretty well, but those weren't particularly available. They were denied an awful lot of patients. It was all remdesivir. Based on a study that the NIH changed the endpoint from mortality, because it had no impact on mortality, to days recovery. A drug that the WHO recommended against its use in COVID in November of 2020, but a drug that cost over $3,000 for a course of treatment, versus things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, who even Dr. Fauci, and I should have got that one out because I want to take this time to end things on the record, said we need to have a very tight protocol on remdesivir because it's unknown, but hydroxychloroquine, and that's approved, some side effects, but we have a long history of it. Let's put up my latest chart. Again, I was tracking adverse events on the experimental injection. But I use this chart as comparison. So you've got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. These are average, again, Bayer's doesn't improve causation, but there's correlation. It's there for safety signal. So ivermectin, over 30 years of FDA reports, 17 deaths per year. Hydroxychloroquine, over 38 years of reporting, 142 deaths per year. Remdesivir, over 5.5 years, 546 deaths per year. The COVID injection, almost 7,000 deaths per year. Which is safest? What did the FDA freak us out about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, when they turned a complete blind's eye toward the injections injury? So I want to enter the quote from the surgeon. By the way, here's the answer. Cheryl Atkinson in an interview said that when it comes to money, we check financial ties with my experts on the government panel devising coronavirus treatment guidelines, which have the effect of dialing back hydroxychloroquine use and giving an edge to remdesivir. We found the 11 members reporting links to a drug company, 9 of them named relationships to remdesivir's maker Gilead. 7 more, including 2 of the committee leaders, have ties to Gilead beyond the 11 months they have disclosed. 2 are on Gilead's advisory board, others were paid consultants who received research support and honoraria. By the way, within the study, I think one of the study participants was employee of Gilead. A bunch also had conflicts with Gilead. So, gee, I wonder why. You know, their conflicts of interest, Gilead made billions of dollars off of remdesivir and people died.
You're sweating awful hard.
Safety signals, I put that down now. This has come to light. This is Dr. Drew Weissman, who got the Nobel Prize for the mRNA platform. He wrote to Dr. Fauci on February 8th of 2020. Tony, I wanted to alert you to some new data we generated with our mRNA LNP vaccine. Now, it was a higher fold dose, but that mRNA LNP go to the placenta and fetus, measured by translation of the mRNA and cause of immune response in an amniotic fluid. So that same day, Dr. Fauci responds, it'd be interesting to see what human dose levels given intermuscular do. So about a month later, Dr. Weissman replies and said, we still have some concerns over the data after they tested the IM. Now, again, there's more documentation in terms of the FDA blew it off. So, don't worry about that. That's the whole thing. That's what Peter Marks did when he was shown that his algorithm is going to mass safety signals. The last thing I want to enter in the record here is, and I want to make the point, you know, why is this important? That they buried the treatment of severely injection injury. The fact that we haven't acknowledged these injection injuries, these people can't get treatment. They're being gaslit by their doctors. So it's all in your head. The rate of the injection injury of suicides is increasing because they've given up hope. Because our medical establishment and federal health agencies have completely failing to acknowledge it. So again, Dr. Nath was diagnosing and treating injection injury in March of 2021. This concerned people. So you have Dr. Walter Koroshitz writes Dr. Fauci. One of the points to me, there's been a steady, slow stream of reports to me of post-vaccination neurological conditions. Dr. Nath has been collecting a bunch. He has reports sent out to publish. Well, that alarmed everybody. Boy, you can't let the public know what's actually happening. You can't actually let the public know what the science is showing. So on April 29th, a email from Francis Collins, head of NIH, to Dr. Koroshitz, says, I find this approach troubling and will have the main consequence of feeding vaccine hesitancy and social media overreaction. Then Dr. Lawrence Tabak writes to Francis Collins, I don't understand why Walter does not shut this thing down. Why don't you shut down that Dr. Nath, who's actually treating injection injury? Why? Because of vaccine hesitancy. Because we haven't acknowledged that. The reason I've been advocating for this is because I know the injection injury. I know people who lost loved ones within days of the injection. And we've turned our backs on them. They deserve acknowledgement. They deserve to be heard, seen, and believed so they can get treatment. I also know the doctors whose careers were destroyed because you denigrated things like ivermectin and denied ivermectin to people in hospitals who got their kidneys knocked out by the remdesivir, got put on ventilators, never got to hug their loved ones goodbye because of those hospital protocols. That's what your science did to people. So, Dr. Fauci, my only question is, based on your lack of testimony here today, based quite honestly on our investigation into the cover-up of safety signals and injection injuries. We've issued letters to a number of former FDA officials to come in for transcribed interviews. You will be getting a letter today asking for a volunteer transcribed interview. So I'd be asking, will you comply or will I have to subpoena you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Expect a subpoena. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Expect a subpoena, cunt.
Dr. Fauci, did you personally receive any royalty payments connected to COVID-related intellectual property?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that NIH receives royalty payments from certain pharmaceutical companies, why would any American believe these financial ties did not influence decisions about which treatments were promoted or restricted?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Why doesn't NIAID publicly disclose these payments?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you partner with Bill Gates on global health initiatives or vaccines?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How much did Bill Gates' entities provide in funding to NIAID collectively since 2005?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
To your knowledge, did Bill Gates partner with China on sensitive research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Specifically, dual-use research such
You
as
can't
measures or gain
plead the
function?
Fifth. You have a pardon, you silly shit.
I decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You know if Bill Gates' entities partnered with U.S. government classified programs?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you know if Bill Gates maintains an active national security clearance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you advocate or request for Bill Gates to receive a security clearance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon
Yeah,
my rights under
no.
the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Bill Gates
Do
shouldn't
they
have
acknowledge that NIAID or
security
NIH
clearance.
through HHS
Elon Musk
sponsored or requested
shouldn't have
clearance
security
from Bill Gates?
clearance.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights.
Alright, Elon Musk isn't even
Around
American.
2010, my understanding is that the government shifted its approach to biodefense countermeasure research. Did NIAID, under your leadership, partner with the Obama White House or any other U.S. government classified entities on sensitive countermeasures research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights
Elon,
under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
it's just my opinion. Probably went to Epstein's Island.
On the
But
advice
he
of
was
counsel, I
too
respectfully
rich
decline
to
answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Epstein to blackmail him.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Was it considered
Elon Musk probably
dangerous to
said,
conduct
hey, you know what's going to happen if anything comes out about me?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully
You
decline
better.
to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Why did you take steps to mature the government's approach to biodefense?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Were there any specific lines of effort or actions you felt were needed during this time to improve the research, development, and fielding model?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How was dual use and gain of function incorporated and accounted for in maturing biodefense countermeasures?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever discuss moving gain of function countermeasures research out of government space to private industry space?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How were these private organizations regulated through government oversight while conducting risky research, including gain of function and gene editing technology?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did the Obama White House or any government entities take steps to inject funding into private industry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How do you ensure that our national security and public health is protected when private organizations work with foreign countries of concern and have the no government oversight, such as the Eco Health Alliance research, grant you funded in a CCP military lab?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given the culture of the pay to play NIAID, did you or anyone act on your behalf, make any payment or enter any arrangement in any way or fashion to secure influence the broad pardon you received from President Biden?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Department of Energy that confirms during Anthony Fauci's tenure that Bill Gates was given Q security clearance from 2014 to 2021 without objection. That will be entered into the record. I'd also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the contents of the folder of authorities provided to Dr. Fauci, including the pardon. Let's be clear today, what we've seen. I really did want to hear from Dr. Fauci. I wanted to hear perhaps an apology, perhaps some semblance of being sorry for what happened or that judgment errors were made. We didn't hear any of that. But he was subpoenaed here to testify, refused to answer any questions even after being directed by the chair and being advised of the law requiring him to do so. He has cited a privilege that is unsupported because of his blanket pardon and because he waived the privilege by testifying at the start. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to comply with the law, limited to the period of your pardon. At any point between January 1st, 2014 and January 19th, 2025, did you destroy any federal record or tell anyone else to?
Under the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that you have a unlimited presidential pardon, what is your specific objection that you are making?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
My question was limited to the period of your pardon only. I find your objection unsupported and direct you to answer the question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Because you refuse to answer, citing a privilege that is unsupported because of your pardon, and after being denied to do so, this committee has scheduled a vote next week on a resolution certifying your contempt. I think we have another question or two from Senator Locke.
Mr. Chairman, really this is a question for you. It's a question to try to figure out how do we get a good answer on this. Because clearly Dr. Fauci's attorneys are saying that he has a Fifth Amendment right. We've also subpoenaed him to be able to compel his testimony to be able to be here. I happen to be in the committee was we were also dealing with Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner came and testified, gave an opening statement, and then took the Fifth Amendment. The committee then held her in contempt for that, saying you can't do both. You can't both testify and say I'm not going to answer questions. So the parliamentary question that I think we've got to be able to deal with is this consistent with Lois Lerner? What she also did when she came before Congress, gave an opening statement, testimony, so made a statement, and then refused to answer questions. Are we dealing with the same issue here, where someone is you can't make a statement and say I'm not going to make statements at the same time?
I think it's a very good question. I think that's something all of us will examine over next week. We're going to have a vote next week on contempt. I think there's another legal question that the courts may have to decide upon, and that is whether or not a presidential pardon that offers you complete immunity, that you can still claim that you need protection from immunity when you've been protected. Because Dr. Fauci isn't liable for anything as long as he tells the truth. Even if he admits that he destroyed records on a routine basis. His assistant said she destroyed a ton of emails. I think it was a routine thing. I think he destroyed throughout his career there probably thousands of emails. Even if he did that, as long as he answered truthfully, yes, I did. I didn't think that was important. I made a mistake. He can't be prosecuted for it. Many of the things are outside the statute of limitations as well. All he had to do today, if he wanted this one, to be honest. As long as he was honest, even about committing a crime, he would have no jeopardy. But I think the pardon has given him more immunity than most people would ever get you offer a witness immunity in exchange for testimony, he has blanket immunity. The president gave him blanket immunity for virtually anything he could have possibly done, while at NIH. So I think we all have to individually answer this question. We welcome you to be part of helping us figure out the question, but there will be a vote, at least right now. We plan to be a vote next week on contempt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Today will be the capstone to Anthony Fauci's 40 years of abuse of power at NIH. In the end, must imagine Fauci believes he got away with it. But still, late at night, even the guilty must become anxious, rerunning the scenarios through his mind, wondering, latching on to lingering doubts, and worrying. Did his actions lead to the largest man-made plague in human history? Are the millions dead the result of his experiments or experiments that he approved that increased the pathogenicity of deadly viruses? History will judge, but the facts, as we now know them, paint a sordid tale of dishonesty, misjudgment, and ultimately the hubris, the likes of which the world has rarely seen. If everyone
likes,
we're going to let Dr. Fauci exit. Thank you.
God damn it. Fucking shit. Alright, guys. I'll be back later today. I gotta go do some work. See ya.